This is the 19th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good evening, and welcome to a very special edition, an evening edition. It's like a supper edition. It's not BTL at night. It's not BTL in the midday. It's kind of like BTL late afternoon if you're on the West Coast. I guess it's BTL at night if you're on the East Coast. Anyway, I digress. It is the second BTL of the day, which means there's no BTL on Tuesday morning. That works this way because my guest today is a globetrotter. We spent the last show that Pete Robbins was on trying to figure out like what to call him because he's not an outdoor. He is an outdoor writer, but he's not an outdoor writer. And then he covers the sport, but he also does so much more outside of the sport. And after his most recent adventures in Alaska last month and Mexico the month before, I'm calling him a globetrotter. But it is one of BTL favorites. Pete Robbins joins the show for August 14th in the evening. What's up, Pete?
Nothing, man. I appreciate you fitting me in the evening. I know we had trouble scheduling this, but I always love to come on BTL. And I need to give a huge shout out to your listeners. Every place we go around the world, around the country, the first thing fishermen say to me is, I saw you on BTL. And that's not lying. That's the God's honest truth.
Well, that would explain why yesterday when I got home from surfing in California, I had a package on the door, and I also need to shout out to the UPS or postal because they hide it behind the post so you can't tell there's a package on the front door. So it's not like, this guy hasn't been home in a couple of days. You could tell that by my grass. But I open it up, Richardson 112 leather patch hat, no cost. No, what is it? No
expenses spared.
Yeah, no expenses spared. No expenses spared on the hat. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem. That's one of the things we've been trying to do when people go on trips with us is do a hat that commemorates the trip, whether it's sailfish or tuna, or in your case, it was smallmouth. And I got to say, hats are the toughest thing to buy for someone because people are so freaking picky about style of hat, color of hat, how it has to be bent or not bent or flat that I'm always a little nervous, but I do like to see you rocking it today.
I do BTL merch, and there will be a new BTL merch drop coming in the next couple months. I'm working on some like exclusive one-off things. There may be a limited edition Frank Scalish signature series t-shirt coming down the pipeline. Frank's pumped about that because he gets the majority of the royalties for that. And, you know, Frank with the motor issues he has, that goes 100% to the motor. But I have noticed a trend. So like Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas, Mississippi, Richardson 112s, way to go. But Polinick, have you noticed, and a couple of these other guys have started going with the cord around the bill, or the cord like right here, and then it's kind of like a floppy hat. I don't know if I can get behind that yet.
Is that a dad hat, or is that like the Ted Knight in Caddyshack sort of captain's hat?
It's kind of like a captain's hat. A little bit, but that seems to be making a comeback.
I don't know. I had concerns about my head for a long time. I felt like my ears were way too big, and then I have a long, thin head. So I'm really picky about hats, and even in like 112, some fit me right and some don't.
It's a quarter of an inch. You can put 5 112s on, and one of them you can really lock down, and it fits, and then others the ears will pop out on me. Because like my whole thing is tournament morning, like I'll take the headphones off. You want a hat that you can run, like my ritual is I go in the water, toss a little bit up in the air to the fish gods, go back in the water, run the hands through the hair, and then lock the hat down. And then I'm ready to go, right? But sometimes if it locks down too much and then you go through the weigh-in, then you look like Dumbo the elephant going through the line. But when you lock one down and it hits, then you're ready to go catch fish. So you have to have the right fitting Richardson 112.
Do you wear your hat when you run or do you put it somewhere?
Okay. I'm giving away all my secrets. So I know if I'm in the first 100 of the boat draw in the opens that there'll be a camera boat waiting outside, right? So I take it and I ratchet it down an extra notch so it really, really stays snug. And then I'll run past the guy taking the still photos, you know, with the hat on, with the intense look. Then I'll take it off and put it on there. But if there's no cameraman, I don't keep it on. Do you keep yours on when you're running?
No, I'm always, even if it's glued to my head, I'm afraid it's going to fly off. I've had too many partners like on first blast off in the morning who lost their hats and wanted to go back when you're running to your first spot. And I'm clearly not going to do that. So I put it on the shifter and hang it over that. Yep. But recently someone gave, I want to say it was a Richardson 117 or 172. It was a flex fit type hat. And I loved the way it fit. But literally every time I wore it in the boat, I had no idea what to do with it when I was running. So it had to go bye-bye.
Yeah, the flex fits are like that too. But I had it's funny you mentioned that. So Hartwell last year, I made the top 10. I'm down to the wire on the second day. I've had a crappy second day. I didn't know that I was making the top 10. I needed one more fish, right? And I drew one of my buddies, Jonathan. And I'm like, dude, we got 20 minutes left. I'm going to get 10 minutes to fish this spot. I need to make a call. And I mean, I'm booking it in the cat. I'm 73, trimmed out, live wells full. We're heading. Shoom, his hat goes flying. And we're a quarter mile from the spot. And he's like, oh, man, my hat. And I'm like, sorry, dude, we're rolling. So we roll. And then as we fish, he starts to tell me this story about how it's like his favorite hat. I think like maybe a relative who had passed away had given it to him and had been his lucky hat for like the past 5 years that they got like on their only vacation that they went on together. I mean, I started feeling really bad while I was drop shotting for spotted bass. Long story short, I'm sitting there going, I should have gone back for this guy's hat. Now I feel like an asshole. And I catch one, I call, and I look down at my trail. I'm like, all right, we got to go in. And I like intentionally kind of take the trail that I'd taken, you know, a little bit out of the way, headed back to Green Pond Landing. I kid you not, Pete. I see the hat bobbing at 65 miles an hour. I stop down. I do one spin, reach the hand down, pluck the hat, hand it back to him, and we make it back to weigh-in.
And that's why you made the top 10.
That's 100%.
The only thing that would have been cooler is if you just kept driving and not slowed down and circled back and just grabbed it as you went by.
But then the hat, you know, you ever tried to do that where you have to be at a dead idle or else it pushes the bow wake pushes the hat out of the way. But anyway, we digress. Congratulations. Welcome back to, well, Alaska is the United States, but I want to start out by your trips. I always like hearing your trips. We know from the last shows, if you listen to BTL, Alaska near and dear to my heart. The wild Alaskan rainbow is the closest thing to a Great Lakes smallmouth that you can catch. And the only reason why people in the South are not obsessed with them and make the trip is because they don't know what they're missing. Would you agree?
I would agree. I'm probably going to get killed for saying this. I have a video of when Keith Combs and I went there in 2019, and he's fighting like a 26-inch rainbow, and he's yelling, "This thing fights harder than any smallmouth I've ever caught." And then he kind of turns around mid-fight and says, "You better not be taping that." They're amazing fish. I mean, how you can go to a stream that's 20 feet wide and 10 inches deep, and you don't see the fish at all, and then he takes your fly and he just destroys you. And it made me enthusiastic about other types of fishing, and it made me enthusiastic about bass fishing. I mean, to learn how fish work in current, because you can watch everything they're doing there. And I feel like I came back from that trip understanding more about how I'll catch fish on the Potomac.
I do know, talking to Steve Kennedy, that trout fishing in current is one of the main reasons why when you see him on the Alabama River, when you see him on current fisheries, he tends to do well. And that's an understanding based on just his fishing knowledge of how fish use seams, current, rocks, boulders, current breaks, eddies, ambush points. So even though it's a different species, very applicable to helping you catch more bass.
Yeah, I mean, Kennedy's a good example of someone who likes to fish for a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. If you've ever seen, it's worth going on Facebook and seeing the pictures. I think they went to Yellowstone on their honeymoon, and there's Steve and Julia in their fly fishing vests with a bunch of Yellowstone trout looking happy as can be. And like, that's really cool to me, because I think there are a lot of self-respecting bass anglers who would never do that.
Did you do a bunch of different stuff on this last trip, or did you guys go straight to the Naknek?
No, we started off, we went to Homer. After I took the bar exam in
Oh, that's a
1995.
cool place.
Yeah, two friends and I had traveled Alaska for a month camping, and I hadn't been to Homer since 95. So I wanted Hannah to see that. So we went with another couple and we spent 2 days there. Did no fishing in Homer, went kayaking. And have you been to the Salty Dog Saloon?
I have.
We spent some
I
time
actually
in the Salty
have.
Dog.
So
that's the famous bar. Yeah.
Let me pull a map up here because Alaska, I think, to a lot of people is just Alaska. Fair assessment.
Yeah, except for the fact that you could fit Texas and California and New York inside of it.
All right. So this is like where my deal is here. This is like Homer is right here where I'm circling, if my geography is correct.
I think that's right.
This is like Kenai. This is the Kenai Peninsula. This is the world famous rainbow trout. And then Naknek here has the giant star. Now, that is a very deceptive star. There's like 11 people there when I went there the one time. Were there more people there in July?
In July, there's a lot of people. They're all starting to leave because it's the biggest commercial sockeye salmon run in the world. So in June and July, they're working like overnight, harvesting as many sockeyes as they can before they die. And then they all start to leave about this time of year.
You didn't get to fish at all in Homer down there? Like no steelhead or anything?
We didn't fish in Homer, but then we went up with the other couple and we met my cousins in Seward.
Mm-hmm.
And we went fishing and we caught halibut and silver salmon and rockfish. Actually, I'll try to send it to you. We put up a picture on Facebook of Hannah holding up 2 black rockfish, and they look just like really dark largemouths. And I just think it's one of the coolest things to do. The guide literally at the end of the day is like, okay, guys, you can each catch 3 of these rockfish. And he pulled up on a rock and literally everyone made 3 drops and caught a 3 to 4 pound rockfish. And that was that on a little spoon after catching a bunch of halibut. So we all sent home a bunch of fish from Seward.
Are they similar to sea bass, like taste wise?
Yeah, they're white and they're flaky. Actually, we had some the other night and they kind of we couldn't tell them apart from the halibut. They're white and relatively mild. So I really like it. I tend not to like salmon all that much. It's a little too fishy for my taste. But the sea bass, the rockfish and the halibut is real good.
Did they shoot any of the halibut?
We didn't catch any ones big enough, but they definitely beat the crap out of them with a bat.
Yeah. Were you a fan of the halibut fishing? That was cool after I caught one.
When Keith and I went 4 years ago, we went out like 85 miles on an overnight thing, and we caught a bunch of monsters, like 100, 150 pounds.
That they shoot. They pull a handgun out.
Yeah, or they harpoon them, either one. Those were cool until it was a 24-hour trip. So finally, like at 11 o'clock at night, we both fell asleep in the cabin on the boat. And at 1:30 in the morning, the captain comes banging on who wants to catch a 150-pound halibut? And I was like, please, Keith, get up. Please, Keith, get up. I've caught more than I can handle in a day. And he wasn't moving at all. So I get up and I have like morning breath stink on my mouth and I'm tired and I'm reeling this 150-pound fish up from 300 feet of water. It was the most miserable I've ever been catching a trophy fish in my life.
Did I tell you my halibut story the last time you were on?
I don't think so.
So I go out with my buddy Owen who lives up there. That's how I've been able to go up to Alaska 4 times. And we go out halibut fishing. And, we catch some 20, 30, 40 pounders. Some they call them like hens or whatever.
Right. Chickens.
That's it. And then we catch a 100-pounder. And no one warned me that they were going to shoot it. So all of a sudden, here's a guy just poo, poo, poo. And I'm like, holy cow, what is that? And then the thing's in there. And it's like, there's like 6 of us on the boat. It's like, holy cow, this thing is massive. So now I'm all keyed up and I'd caught a little chicken and I'd caught a couple like 20-pound cod. But I guess because of the tide or whatever, the current, like, you don't understand, you're out in the middle of the bay and the current is insane out there. There's really like a small window that you can catch him before it gets too stiff. We're putting like giant cut bait on there for him, big circle hooks. And so I drop it down and all of a sudden it feels like a halibut. And I'm like, I'm on, right? I'm hooked up. And the guy before it was me, Owen, and this is a key part to the story, unfortunately. His 12-year-old nephew who's from Alaska. And then another couple that we didn't know. It was like Owen's buddy who was the guide who knew what was going on. And I'm in. Well, the guy who caught the 100-pounder, he called for the belt. So I'm like, okay, this is a good one. Belt. I'm feeling it's doing the thing where it swims like that. It swims like a barn door. It's what they're called. It feels like you're bringing it up. So I call for the belt and I fight this thing, 400 foot down, and I'm bringing it up, and I mean, my rod's bouncing. Dude, I get this thing up, and I've been fighting it on the belt, and I've been humming and hawing. I didn't even have a fish on. My bait had gotten tangled in my 1 pound weight, and it was in the current, and it was rolling. And I took so much crap from that kid for calling for the belt without even having a fish on. But I think one day of halibut fishing is good for me each trip. Like, I definitely want to go the next time I go, but more than that, it's way too much work. It's kind of like surfing.
Yeah, it's actually more work to bring your bait in without a fish on it than it is to bring in the fish. But it's cool. It's a day when you go out. There's no stress. We got a day when it was calm. We had really cool wildlife. We didn't see any whales on this trip, but we had these Dall's porpoises, which looked like little mini orcas. And on our way back in, like 20 of them came around the boat and just put on a show, just jumping and frolicking around. It was something I had never seen added to my life list.
Did that screw the fishing up?
We were heading in at that point.
Oh, okay. And then you went to Naknek. Rainbow or silvers up there? Or down there?
We did a little bit of the silver stuff. We did 3 days of flyouts, though, for rainbows and grayling and Dolly Varden. To me, I can go throw effectively a wiggle wart or troll a wiggle wart or throw a big MEP spinner at home if I want to. Mm-hmm. I want to go do those flyouts where no one else has been or where no one else has been recently and spend time where you're worried if there's a bear around the next corner and catching those shallow water fish. To me, that's the exciting thing.
Any 30 inchers?
No, 26 was our biggest. The 30s had come when you went in September and October. So
okay,
we clearly need to go back. In fact, I brought all this new AFCO clothing, a new vest, a new shacket type shirt. And nice. It was like 75 degrees every day. They still have the tags on them. I don't believe it really gets cold in Alaska. I need to go in September or October.
Oh, dude, it was really freezing when I went up to Naknek. But so what, a 27, 28, that's like an 8 to 10 pound rainbow?
I guess. I came home and I was reading something about a guy in Montana saying, this is our trophy stream. You can catch all the 17 to 21 inchers you want. And I was thinking, well, we did that every day. So it's going to be real hard for me to go catch 9-inch brook trout in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia here.
Is that going to be a every year or every other year thing for you?
I feel like it's every other year.
Yeah.
It's expensive to go to Alaska because everything has to be brought in by barge or by plane.
Yep.
It just seems everything's a little bit more expensive. And I've realized that it's fun to go with the group. The 4 people in our group with us had never been before. 2 of them had never fished before.
Oh, wow.
And it's cool to see an old place or a semi-old place through new eyes. I want my friends to be able to see that. I think, at risk of sounding too corny, every American needs to go to Alaska at some point. It's just an amazing place. It's the closest thing we have to sort of an African safari and still use American currency.
Do you have any other places in mind or
for Alaska or in general?
Alaska, because in my opinion, like that Kenai Peninsula and that base of the Aleutian Island chains. I mean, I know there's a lot of great stuff everywhere else, but that's like kind of the Mecca.
Yeah, it's the tourist Mecca. I would like to go to Kodiak Island, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And in '95, my buddies and I, we camped in Denali National Park. I'd like to go back and do that. And my first client at my law firm out of law school was the North Slope Borough of Alaska, as far north as you can go to Prudhoe Bay. And I hosted those people in DC all the time, and I met them a lot, but I never actually made it there. And I would like to go up into the Arctic Circle at some point, whether there or in the Northwest Territories or somewhere else.
That would be fun. You ship everything back then, box it up, dry ice, ship it back, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, and the stuff you take home from Naknek, you can check through as luggage. They pack it in an insulated box. You check it through as a piece, another suitcase, effectively, and it's there when you get home.
And then the month before that, did you do El Salto?
We did El Salto for a week back in June. We had a group of 12 or 14 who went down there. That's been our annual June trip for over a decade now, and that's my happy place. That's my second family, I feel like.
I was talking to you before we went live. I'm going in December with my buddy Darren, who basically taught me. I was 14 years old fishing the Assumption Bass Club, and the John Ader, the guy I fished with when I was 13, moved, didn't have anyone to fish with, and Darren was like, I'll take the kid with 6 tackle box and 95 rods every tournament. Doesn't know what he's doing. Casts on top of you. But anyway, he's like one of my best friends in the world. And he was like, dude, you got to go down to Mexico. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I bass fish. I fish falcon. I fish Amistad. And he's like, no, you got to go down to Mexico. But we were talking beforehand. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. Like, because you're not on the front. Like, you basically have a guide and he takes you out there and You don't have live scope. I don't know how you can catch a fish without live scope now. You have all sort, but you were saying it's a totally different experience, but something that you don't want to miss.
To me, it's you have to treat it as a vacation, not as a tournament. You have to go down there ready to just let the day unfold as it is. The guides there are smart. They'll see what you're capable of doing. They'll see what your tackle looks like. They'll ask you if you like to fish a particular way, particularly in December. I've had some of the best topwater bites of my life in December there, both usually in the low light hours, but I've also caught them on a 10XD and a Carolina rig in December there. It's a pretty varied time. So you should be able to do a number of different things, which does give you some agency in terms of asking your guide, hey, I want to crank. And that's what appeals to me. I mean, I love catching them on a plopper, nothing more than that. But I never get to fish a 10XD at home. So if there's an opportunity to do that, I'd like to do that too.
Is there shad in El Salto or is it just tilapia?
There are shad too. And that's sort of one of the misconceptions. They definitely eat tilapia. I'm sure if you're there for a week, you will see a fish choking on a tilapia at some point, just floating up there. One who died, gave his life for the cause. But there are a lot of times when they get on that little shad bite and they won't touch the bigger baits. People feel like they have to go down there with the biggest baits they have. And a lot of times the fish are not indiscriminate about that. So like one of my favorite baits down there is that Berkeley War Pig rattling bait. And there'll be times when they're keyed in on the shad and the shad are exactly the same size as that half-ounce rattling bait. And we've caught the crap out of them when they won't touch bigger things.
Can you drop shot and stuff too? I mean, effectively, or is that like a deal where you actually leave the spinning rods at home for this one?
I've sworn to myself at some point that I was going to take a spinning rod down there. I wouldn't do it if it was your first trip, because if it's your first trip, you just want to get the most out of it, as many fish as you can. But 20 trips in, it would be a great place to learn how to use a spinning rod better. Kind of like, going to the St. Lawrence.
Okay.
There's so much cover there, though. It's hard to use light line. I typically don't use anything under 14, preferably nothing under 17. I have power shotted there with a casting rod and done okay, but I don't know that it's any better than a jig or a Texas rig or anything like that.
Didn't you just do an article like the Mexican Essentials or something?
I've done a lot of articles on our website, about things you need to bring, different colors you need to bring. I feel like it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the packing process and say, I want to try these 26 glide baits that I own, and forget to bring Senkos or lizards or something like that. It's important, particularly your first time, to pack pretty cautiously.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be the first time that I fish multiple days in a row without stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you noticed in your many years covering professional tournaments that the guys who catch them are less stressed than the guys who need to catch them and don't catch them? I know we talk about that before, like, a guy will come off stage and you're like, leave him alone. He's stressed the hell out. He needs a check. But it also seems like the guys who catch him, obviously it's fun to catch him, but do you think they're having fun and enjoying themselves because they're catching them, or do you think they're catching them because they're having fun and enjoying themselves?
I think you have to love it, first of all. You have to love being out there and competing every day, no matter what, to be good at it. But, I mean, maybe we've talked too much about Van Dam in the recent weeks, but I'm going to talk about him anyway. I mean, the Van Dam wink, when he goes out on day 4 and you watch him and he winks at you, he doesn't have a worry in the world. And because he's been on day 4 8,000 times before. And the guy who needs to pay his mortgage, and the guy who has 3 screaming babies at home, and the guy who doesn't know where his next entry fee is coming from, and he's made his first final day cut, it's got to be a little intimidating to go against Kevin and watch him so relaxed. And I just remember in the old days watching a cameraman climb all over Kevin's trolling motor mount, shoot a shot up his shorts and from his back and climb on him, and nothing ever seemed to faze him. And that's part of why he was so good. Whereas you look at Mike Iaconelli, he loves it. He loves fishing as much as anyone, but he channels his emotions differently for success.
Much differently.
I think that might be the understatement of my career.
You brought up Kevin. Yeah. Why do you think he retired right now? I mean, the guy's still at the top of his game. He just finished second. He's been top 20 in the Angler of the Years. He was still winning cups. I mean, he wasn't as dominant as he was during his run, but if you look at any professional athlete, they have a time, that they're dominant. But I mean, dude, the guy's still at the top of his game. Why do you think he retired?
I can only speculate because I haven't discussed this.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, Kevin's at an in-between age. Obviously, it's a sport where you can compete to some extent as long as you want to. You can be Rick Clunn or Larry Nixon and still occasionally be competitive out there. There's no question about that. Kevin is the face of the sport, and I think he knows that. Kevin is the face of his generation in the sport. I mean, he was the first break from if Gary Klein was the first guy to come after the sort of Nixons and Cluns and Rollins, Kevin was the first one in that next generation. And that next generation is reaching an inflection point. You've seen guys like Jay Ellis, who's his peer, retire. You see Mike Iaconelli, who's a little bit later than him, going into the Hall of Fame. Even though you can retire and unretire again, you kind of only get one true bite at the apple. And Kevin has a chance to make an impression bigger than anyone in this sport has ever made as an angler.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's very close to and very much influenced by Johnny Morris. As you hear Kevin talk lately, you hear him talk about conservation a lot more. You hear him talk about content and teaching a lot more. Mm-hmm. The one thing, having fished with Kevin a few times, when he's out there, he is laser focused on what he's doing. The wink may be there. He may be happy with what he's doing, but he's not focused on the guy in the back of the boat. He's not focused on the fans, except as they impact him. In order to be great at something else, you have to take that focus away. I mean, how many people do you know in your life who are world-class at two things? A great musician and a great baseball player, or a great politician and a great trumpeter. It's hard to be world-class at two things, and you only get one chance in your life to make that break, I feel like. And I don't know if he sees it that way, but I do. He's still at an age where he's physically able to do a lot of things. He's physically able to be competitive, and he can walk away on his own terms.
So you think he's got a second act coming?
I think he does. I mean, you look at all the guys in life who didn't have a second act. Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan will never be able to replicate what he did on the basketball court, and he's tried. He's tried to be an owner. He's tried to be a baseball player. He's tried to play basketball with another team. It's hard to have a second act, and how someone who's truly great distinguishes themselves, I think, is by having that second act. You become one notch higher than that 1%.
I'm all in on a retirement tour, or not a retirement, a senior tour. I think he's got it up his sleeve with Johnny. I think they're going to do a senior tour.
You think so? Who's the market for that though? That doesn't already exist.
Bass Pro Shops customers, people with money, who will come out and see him, and they'll do it. You know how much they like that? They like the opens that were around where the Bass Pro Shops were. Johnny's dabbled in the tournament with the $1 million U.S. Open. He's got Kevin. He's got Bill. He's got a number of these guys that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, rolling. It makes total sense. And the demographic of those guys are going to have disposable income. And you can roll it into a conservation and a teaching deal if you do it 4 to 6 times a year.
I guess if you did it 4 to 6 times a year as a made for TV or made for Twitter or made for YouTube event, it doesn't appeal to me. And I idolize a lot of those guys and really care about their stories and about
how does that not appeal to you?
But I still want to see the guys who are at the top of their game, best in the world, doing what they do. Like that, to me, that's what's most interesting.
Okay, then explain to me why Jimmy and Bill have the longest lines at the Bassmaster Classic every single year. You literally can tell where they are because their lines are wrapping around whatever booth they're in, and they haven't been at the top of their games. Jimmy more recently, but they haven't been at the top of their games in decades.
I guess I'm not the prototypical fan then, because to me, it just, I don't know, like as a one-off made for TV thing, maybe 4 times a year, maybe.
And I think a 4 to 6 where they have a 1 or 2 day tournament that's like 4 hours in length. They might fish with another celebrity. They weigh their fish in. They have a thing at the Bass Pro Shops, a meet and greet. I mean, dude, if you can get Kevin and Jimmy and Bill and Roland and Larry and Denny all in the same spot, you're going to bring in so much nostalgia and so many people with disposable income that are going to come to meet those guys to talk about the 93 classic that he went to with his kid, or, you know, I mean, you could even throw like a Mark Davis, a Clun in there, all those guys. I mean, there's a ton of guys that are in their 50s and 60s and 70s right now, some of which that are fishing out of necessity, some of which that are fishing because they love it, some of which that are fishing because they don't know anything else to do, and some of which that aren't fishing anymore, that I think this would be perfect for. Jeffries was big on this. Jeffries was big on a senior tour with BTL.
It just feels like there's a two-tier system there, and I'm not taking away anything from the guys in their 80s who were the forerunners and the fathers of the sport, but to expect most of them to be consistently competitive with Kevin is unrealistic.
Well, it's like the senior PGA. You still have the guys who do it, but I mean, it's not all about like the winning thing. It'd be events that include some sort of competition aspect of it.
You realize there's going to be like 800 BBC posts and podcasts about how they selected the guys and why did we leave this guy out and this guy should be there. It's because he runs a small boat or because he's from the wrong state or the wrong tour.
He took Johnny pig hunting in 74. I'm shocked that you're not all in on this, Pete. Like, being a historian of the game and stuff, I thought you would be. I thought this would like really tickle your fancy.
No, it doesn't do it. I mean, I would like to spend time with all those guys. I'd like to hear their stories. I have to be careful not to take anything away from them because all of them are superior fishermen. They're in their later years. They may not be as competitive as they once were on the water. They may not be as adept with current technology as they were. Okay, I'll do it if you put them in like 1976 boats with a flasher and a carbureted motor on the back.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It just, for me, like what my dreams are to fish. I've been fortunate. I've been in the boat with Clun. I've fished with Denny a couple times. I fished with Kevin a couple times. Like, I really want to fish with Larry Nixon, but that's because Larry Nixon is still highly competitive.
Oh, dude, you look at his stats. He hasn't ever slowed down.
Yeah,
ever. And he's 70, what, 2?
He's amazing. I don't know how he does it. I mean, Kevin, you can see in recent years, Kevin, like you said, still finished second in his last tournament, but the hyper vigilant, hyper fast style that made him so great when he was young takes its toll on your body. And it's harder
I don't
to
think
do
that has anything to do with age. I think
do.
that has to do with drive and desire.
Well, you're not 50 years old.
That's a fair point. And I just surfed at 38 and can barely move. So you might have a valid point. I mean, what was it like being in the boat with Clun? I've never been in the boat with Clun.
So I rode with Clun at the Pittsburgh Classic. The first day I rode with Clun.
No way. You were in the boat with Clun in the 2005 Pittsburgh Classic.
2005 Pittsburgh Classic, second day.
Okay.
He caught 2 keepers for 2 pounds on a spinning rod with a split shot rig, and I fell asleep. It was the very beginning of my writing career. I hadn't written anything for Bassmaster yet. And I had heard all these stories about how he doesn't talk in the boat, about how he'll chew you out. If you talk to him, he'll ignore you. So I was so overly respectful, and it was so freaking hot and boring that finally I just took a nap. I would guess for about 45 minutes or an hour.
He didn't say anything to you all day?
He said he was perfectly polite and in the ride to and from the ramp. Actually, what I remember about that day is being in the boatyard in the morning, and we were parked next to Aaron Martin's. And it was when they used to, instead of having marshals, they would pair up media with the anglers. Yeah. And Bass tried to put 2 media members in the boat with Aaron. What? And Clun very politely but very firmly let the Bass staff have it. He said, "You can't do that. You know, you're going to destroy his chances of winning this tournament." And then Aaron did his, bro, whatever, it's cool, I'll make it happen. And Clun said they are going to steal, just by being slow or moving around slowly, they're going to steal 20 casts from you today, and that could cost you your livelihood and your title. And to his credit, Bass backed down and took one of the media members out of Aaron's boat. Aaron didn't win, but it wasn't because he lost those 20 casts.
He almost won that one.
He almost won. It's still one of the most painful videos to watch of Aaron breaking off a fish and just collapsing on the deck of his boat, lying on his back like a turtle. It's, I think we were both very fond of him, and to think about that and what could have been is heartbreaking.
I just remember on that final day, Brad Wall, I think he was in the Hooters boat with those Hooters girls there.
Yes.
And that had to be, I think Brad was in the boat with him then, because I remember he still had it in 2007 when he was on the FLW tour. Let me look his stats up.
Let's see if I can find you the picture.
Okay. I want to see if I can pull this up. Oh, pull up for me. Dang, there's a bunch of Brad. Oh, that's Brad Wall. Brad Wall. Is that him? I'm trying to find a picture of this. This was awesome. He had the Hooters chicks.
I definitely have a picture of it if I can find it.
Oh yeah, here it is, right here. Look at that. Oh, wait a second. Stop screen, share screen. We're both clicking. There it is. There's Brad Wall, Hooters boat, wrapped orange and black, 4 Hooters chicks in the boat. That had to be like the sponsor of all sponsors.
Yeah, I don't know why they never got more traction in the bass fishing world. It seemed pretty logical.
I think it was something where he like knew one of the head marketing guys for Hooters or something like that. I believe, but he was at every single tournament with the Hooters chicks in the bass boat.
I just sent you my pictures. I'll see if they come through.
But I just remember I covered that year on the FLW tour, and I thought that was brilliant marketing on Hooters' part.
I haven't been to a Hooters in like 15 years. There's just no real reason to go to it anymore. It was a big deal when I was a kid. It was considered cutting edge, but now it's just kind of blah. I guess I'm 53 years old.
I haven't been for a coat. Where was I? I was stuck somewhere for. Oh, I'll tell you the last time I went to a Hooters. I know exactly when the last time I went to a Hooters was. I was in South Carolina, and I dropped my phone in the water, and I got lost, and I didn't know where to go because I didn't have any technology whatsoever, and it was dark, and it was the first night of the time in the VRBO. I needed to go somewhere with Wi-Fi so I could instant message Andrew Upshaw and let him know I dropped my phone in the water and I needed directions to the house. And then I realized, hell, he could give me directions. I still wouldn't know how to get there. So I got a room at a microtel and then went and ate dinner at Hooters until the next morning when I could go to the AT&T store to get a new phone.
That's the glamorous life of the touring professional.
And that was the only reason I went, was because it was the only thing within walking distance. I pulled up on a curb, didn't even plug my boat in. I was so pissed off. Oh. All right. You good to talk about some more recent stuff? Because we've got a wild Angler of the Year race going. We got a lot of stuff going on in the fishing industry. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, Pete Robbins, we're going to dive into 2023. We've been living in the 90s for the majority of the show, Pete.
I've been living in the 80s my whole life, Matt.
Globetrotter, outdoor rider extraordinaire Pete Robbins joining us for a special evening edition of BTL on Monday, August 14th. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
The great thing about the new Sensation soft plastics from Big Bite Baits, heavily scented, super soft, buoyant, comes in 7 great new shapes. I've got a couple of them of my signature series, the Cliffhanger Worm and the Ramtail Craw. Great for a flipping jig, football jig, swim jig, all that. Several other great shapes. Really excited about it. We've worked over the last year, catches fish all over the country, and I think it's going to catch fish for people everywhere you try it.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got copper shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got sparkle shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte sexy shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look. That matte sexy shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronic setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com. Welcome back, BTL, with outdoor writer Pete Robbins. Also want to remind everybody, head over to omniafishing.com. If you listen to BTL yet and you haven't made an account over at omniafishing.com, well, then you should have, because they're a big sponsor of the show. But they're doing a Blackfish Performance Apparel giveaway for the next couple of weeks. Make an account, an Omni account over there, and have a chance to win a bunch of Blackfish apparel stuff. It runs through August 31st. So omnifishing.com. We're gonna have the Omnia guys on in next Tuesday, Trevor and Polish Pete, and they're going to run down all of the smallmouth baits that have played over the plethora of smallmouth events that we've had and will be having over the next month on the Elite Series and the Pro Circuit, or the Invitationals is what they're calling it now. You get tired of the smallmouth derbies, or are you all about big giant brown fish every year from July and August, Pete?
I like the smallmouth tournaments. I wish they were spread out. I wish there was some way to set up the schedule where you had, an absolute slugfest, followed by a grinder, followed by a smallmouth tournament, then maybe a TVA lake, then another smallmouth tournament, something like that. It would be a lot more fun to me if you didn't have southern largemouth, northern smallmouth, and have it bifurcated.
How do they do that, though?
There's no way to do it.
Because anywhere in the South, you do not want to go in August.
The way to do it, and again, I'm not a tournament director or schedule maker, is to spread out the tournament year. Make it a true 10 or 12 month schedule. So you had winter tournaments. I know there's economic value in having them back to back to back to back to back, and having the year be compressed. But when was the last time we had a true winter tournament? When was the last time we had, a slugfest like a California Delta, a tidal water that was really great? I think variety.
The last time they tried to go out west, the anglers revolted, and then they changed the schedule. Because I was looking forward to was it the Columbia River?
Columbia, yeah. Oh,
I was looking forward to that, and literally everyone was like, "We ain't going out there. Screw that."
See, the only one who was happy about that
finally gave the West, its due, and they were going to do where were they going to go? Columbia and Havasu,
or like Shasta or Oroville or one of those places.
One of those, and the anglers were like, "No, we're not driving out there. That's too far." And then they changed it.
Kennedy wanted to go because he's like, we'll have time between Oahe and the Columbia to hit like 17 national parks on the way.
And that was right during the split, like right around that time, and they haven't tried it since.
No, it's too bad. I mean, I understand the financial realities of it. Things are tough, arguably tough in the fishing market right now. Gas is expensive. You can make the case that it should remain mostly a southeastern tour with a late summer jaunt north, but
You can't, if you look at the percentage of Western anglers that are in both the Elite Series and the BPT.
But they're willing to travel still, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, until someone creates a stink and sits out something and makes itself known, which I guess they did with the BPT, and then they sort of replicated the Bass model in many ways. I mean, the fact that they both went to St. Clair, they both go to Murray, things like that, it's hard to distinguish them in many ways.
It surprised me that the BPT has not gone out west yet.
Yeah, I don't know much about the decision-making process there. I believe Mike Malone, who is with Bass, does their scheduling now. So obviously,
but they don't have to take the infrastructure out there with them.
Right.
So it would be a lot more cost efficient for them to go out west because they don't have to do the whole weigh-in thing. They're doing volunteer marshals.
You still have
there's 20 fewer guys, but there's 24 fewer guys, and there's more guys that have a nest egg that fish that tour. To be honest.
Yeah. I don't know.
And a lot of their guys are from out west.
Okay. You should be the commissioner.
I used to think that the smallmouth deals. Yeah, no, I ain't commissioning nothing. I used to think that the smallmouth deals, having fished several opens on the St. Lawrence River, I now see the nuance that I didn't know existed in that style of fishing, to where I used to think it was more predicated on luck than I do now. Now, that could just be because I've had 2 good opens on the St. Lawrence River. But I also think, having been on there, and there is a lot more thinking that goes into that than just go to rock, catch 20 pounds, go home. And it looks like that's what it is, but there's a lot more decision making and a lot more factors in play on those smallmouth fisheries than I think people realize. And those guys who are good at it make it look easy.
From a spectator standpoint, though, it's a lot of guys doing the same thing. And I'm not anti-forward-facing sonar, but it's a lot of guys staring at a screen. The best tournament to me this year was Murray, when you had guys chasing like 4 different bites. You had some guys up on the bank, some guys out chasing the bluebacks, people fishing docks, every different thing going on. And you saw like 4 different techniques being used to their maximum effectiveness. To me, that's sort of a tour de force tournament.
Now, I would counter that, Pete, by saying Champlain is probably the most diverse northern fishery that we go to. And I think, based on some recent local tournaments that have taken place in Ticonderoga and the surrounding area, that the largemouth is going to shock people, because it has been down for the last several years. The smallmouth have played. They're a 4-pound average, but there have been some behemoth local tournaments weighed in from the Thai area on largemouth, which makes that fishery much more diverse when that's in play.
Yes, it's a different fishery than the St. Lawrence or St. Clair. I mean, St. Lawrence, was it Brock Mosley and Hunter Shryock may have shown us that you could potentially compete with largemouths, but day in, day out, you're probably not going to. Whereas on Champlain, you could win with largemouths or smallmouths or a combination of the two.
And I would also counter and say that the St. Lawrence, we've seen a lot of top 10s. Listen to the baits: hair jig, spy bait, tube, drop shot, spinner bait, Ned rig, jig. That's 7 different baits. It's not just a drop shot anymore.
I agree.
It hasn't been. And it's hard to scope in the river, but it does look the same. It does look. You could take St. Clair on either the BPT or the Elite Series and replay 2 hours of day 3 that happened to take place on day 1, and no one would notice. No one would notice.
And it's also hard to tell when a fish is a giant. I mean, you've caught a ton, I'm sure, of 3 to 5 pound smallmouths at this point in your life. It's hard for those of us who don't catch a lot of them to eyeball the difference between the two in your hands. Mm-hmm. So you watch it on TV and you're like, oh, that guy caught another giant. That guy caught another giant. But it's not like a 10 pounder is going to show up suddenly and change the game. You're fishing for those microscopic 2-ounce differences per fish. And that's what really makes the difference.
All right, let's talk some stats, some numbers. Let's take a gander at the Bassmaster Angler of the Year standings. And for the first time in as long as I can remember, you got to go down the list to find a smallmouth aficionado in the hunt for the Angler of the Year. Now, are we going to consider Joey Cifuentes a smallmouth guru or not? Is it yes or no?
No, no one called the Cowboy can be considered a smallmouth, predominantly smallmouth guy.
Cobb, who's a Carolina guy.
Right.
Welcher, who's an Alabama guy who's learning the smallmouth, not great. Rivette, he's a forward-facing sonar guy now, but he's a freaking Cajun.
Yeah, he's a swamp rat.
John Cox, who's hit or miss up there. I mean, it depends on if he can look at him or not. Drew Cook, who's a sight fisherman. Joey Cifuentes, who won, but he wears a cowboy hat, which you said takes him out of the running to be a smallmouth angler. You got to go all the way to 7th. You got to go all the way down to 7th with 516 points, about 60 points out of the Angler of the Year lead to find a guy who you can make a case for as a true smallmouth guy going into the last 2 on Champlain. Is this Angler of the Year Shakuritz to win or lose with 2 left?
You can't say that. I mean, given what Cifuentes did this year and last tournament, we've gotten to the point in life where you can't say that anyone's a lock to do anything. Largemouth guys win on smallmouth waters and smallmouth guys win on largemouth waters. And the fact that Champlain in particular is a both species water makes it an odd duck that someone can go out there and not care at all about smallmouths and light it up and win and take valuable points away from someone else who's on fish. Maybe they're on fish at the St. Lawrence and they catch a bunch of 4 1/4 pounders instead of 4 3/8 pounders. That's seems like a small difference, but it could be a huge difference points wise. So I don't think anything is settled. I think that is one advantage of having smallmouth events at the end of the year is that they tend to be pretty closely packed together. And therefore you can move a lot of points without much difference in weight.
So how far is too far out with 2 events? Is this a Ken Duke question or do you have any? Because
someone who passed algebra would have to
because I'm looking at this 573 points, Welcher and Cobb and Welcher. They're one apart from each other, but then there's a 40-point gap to 4th. And then you go down to Polinick, 464. He's 110 points out. Is he too far out with 2 events left?
I don't know. I really just can't run the math in my head to figure that out.
I run them. I do the math, and I think Polinick is about the furthest outlier for Angler of the Year that you can get with a 100-boat field.
I mean,
based on how these guys are catching.
And when you look at that, you got Hackney in 14th and Polinick in 17th. They're the highest ranking past winners. So in all likelihood, we are going to have a new Angler of the Year.
It's a wild year. None of the northern guys go to the northern swing. And we're 3rd through the northern swing. None of them go into the final 2, who are your Johnstons, Fighters, Polinicks, the guys who normally catch him. Now, here's my wild card, and tell me everything you know about this guy, because all I know is I said hi to him while we were eating a hot dog at a check-in at some point, and he had his translator there. Koya Fujita.
I've talked to him a bit through Satoshi Ito at Daiwa.
Yeah.
And he seems very nice. And I've talked to him through his translator about the dice and all of that stuff. But I don't know anything about him. I know he's kicked butt over in Japan. I know he seems to have kicked butt semi-consistently over here. We as Americans, we just assume all the Japanese anglers are monolithic, and they're not. So it's unfair to make a judgment of him.
Okay, this dude is a freak show when it comes to light line smallmouth.
Yeah, like 3-pound test. But so is
Yes.
Taku. And look where Taku is in the standings now. I mean, it's just a crazy year, like you said.
Where is
Taku's in like 80th or something.
Yeah, okay. So here's my point on this. Dude, I think Koya is going to make a run at the Angler of the Year. I think he's going to top 5 these next 2.
I just hate to predict. I've learned from years of fantasy fishing foibles not to predict because someone has a bad day or they break down or something else happens and their whole deal is shot. I mean, I would expect him to do well based on his track record. I don't know. He
finished 16th at Oneida, but that's because he was using 3-pound test and he farmed a bunch of giants on day 2. He had over 20 pounds out on Shackleton Shoals on day 1. He did donuts with his boat while all of us were going, what the hell is this guy doing? And it's because he was fighting 5-pound smallmouth on 3-pound test, chasing him around the damn shoal. And then he lost him on day 2. That's the only reason why he lost him. I mean, he has and he just finished a 7th at St. Clair. I mean, I think he's going to have a legit shot at the Angler of the Year, Pete.
I think that would be great.
The other thing that's interesting is where the guys are that are fighting for classics that are typically way in. You have Perosnik in 48th, Felix in 43rd. There's a chance that you have back-to-back classic winner Hank Cherry in 42nd that doesn't make it. You have a really bad deal there in Bernie Schultz, who has to have some surgery and stuff, and he's out. He's sitting in 50th, going up to two fisheries that he's going to catch him at if he was there. Mark Menendez, he makes a lot of classics. I'll tell you a guy that I really have expected to come on strong, and I'd be interested in your take on him. And I know he's a heck of an angler, but it hasn't translated yet to the elites, is Cody Huff.
Yeah.
In 57th.
We build up these expectations of anglers, and because he's tight with Clun, and Clun talked about how technical and knowledgeable he was, and we've seen those flashes of brilliance, we forget that he's 24, 25 years old, something like that.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I mean, we've seen, the other thing is we've seen so many 24 and 25-year-olds kick butt over the past few years that we forget that there's a learning curve. Not everyone comes onto the tour like Kevin Van Dam, ready to win Angler of the Year within a year or two. Some of these guys take time.
And then a couple of veterans, Scott Martin in 61st, Swindle in 62nd. Did not see that coming going into this year.
No, I mean, if you told me that Corey Johnston, Scott Martin, Gerald Swindle, Keith Combs, Taku, and Chris Zaldane would be effectively in the bottom half of the standings, I mean, what's the odds of that happening at the beginning of the year? Someone better at math than me would have to figure it out, but it wasn't high.
I hope that Bass, what I would like to see Bass do is the same thing that they do on the PGA. And I know this is difficult, but have someone on this to where when we're watching live in these final two, we see who's in, and then we see who's fighting for their Elite Series lives, because they're going to drop 10 at the end of this year. And I know it's a convoluted deal based on if you have 5, you get a drop year, then it averages it, and then the rookies don't count, but then you take your 2 worst years. It's convoluted on the way that it works, but they have a system. If they could get that to where when we're on live and we know, hey, Angler X has to finish 65th in this tournament or else his career's over, that's where the nut is, in my opinion. That's
fighting for your life.
Yep.
I mean, I've talked to guys like Ed Lochran about it a little bit. He knows that he's fighting for his Elite Series life. I think Daryl Gleason, Frank Talley, some guys like that might be in a similar position. It's got to be tough, and no one wants to have their struggles broadcast to the rest of the world. But that's,
I mean, dude, you're in the top. You're in the top 104. You are the top. That is what the story is. I mean, there's a ton of us who would love to be 104th in the standings right now.
I think the story for me that we haven't discussed is Jason Christie. Just inside the classic cut to go to a classic on Grand Lake. I mean, the idea of him missing a classic at Grand Lake would be soul crushing to him. I think, even though he has one, you win a second classic, you rise into that next echelon of stardom. And I was looking at his statistics today. Champlain, he has a lot of experience on. The interesting one is the St. Lawrence. He has fished 6 BASS events, and 3 he's finished in the top 21, and 3 he's finished 82nd or worse.
Wow,
so he's like all
stuff,
or nothing on the St. Lawrence. So like to him, he's a bubble boy right now, more or less. If he goes into the St. Lawrence on the bubble and you're Jason Christie, you have nothing to prove to anyone, but you want to fish on Grand Lake. What sort of gambles do you take to make sure that you make that classic? You can't fish safe at the St. Lawrence and go catch 3-pounders. It doesn't do you any good.
He is 7 points in the Bassmaster Classic right now. Now there will be a couple double qualifiers. There will be a double qualifier for the Open that Jody White won,
right?
And there was another Open that some guy jackpotted, I think, that won.
Right.
So there's
and as of right now, Gussie is not a double qualifier because he's outside of the cut.
Wouldn't that be something if Gussie jumps up into the cut and his roommate Jason Christie gets into the Classic because Gussie double qualifies?
Yeah, he'd owe him big time. Well,
I also 100%, I'd put money on this. If Christie does not make the Classic, there will be a fire alarm at the expo every single day.
Who do you think of all the pros you've ever talked to hates to work the expo the most?
Jason Christie. He's never done it. No, I mean, yeah, Jason Christie, 100%. How about you? Who's the worst expo worker that you've ever ran into?
I don't know who's the worst, but I do remember Kevin Short back in the day used to keep a square of carpet from the expo floor on the windshield of his boat to remind him that he never wanted to do that again. And to me, that was pretty telling. I mean, the guys they're politically correct about it. I want to be here for my sponsors. If I can't be in the tournament, the fans are what make this happen. But they hate every minute of it.
What else we got, Pete?
Hall of Fame coming up. Ike.
It is.
Ike in the Hall of Fame. And to me, that segues nicely with the Van Dam thing, because Van Dam retiring, to me, Ike, even though they're about the same age, he's a different generation of angler, because they started about 10 years apart at the top level. And Ike is that next generation. I don't think of him as an old guy. I remember his first win at Champlain. And then I remember Denny winning and going Ike at Champlain and making a big deal out of it. But you've been to a bunch of the Hall of Fame events, and I would encourage anyone who's not going. It's a great.
It is open to the public.
Yes.
It literally is open to the public. You can become a member of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, support it. I talked to the last one that I went to. I said, "Hey, who are you with?" And they're like, "Dude, we're just fans of the sport. We like to come every year. We listen to it. You get to bid on some of the auction items. It's at Johnny Morris's $1 billion aquarium, one of the top 5 aquariums in the world. They made a day out of it. They went to the Hall of Fame banquet that night. I was like, dude, more people need to do this.
Yeah, it's one of the best weeks of the year. And I think, Ike is going to do to the Hall of Fame what he did to the sport. He's going to take what was a relatively reserved sport and a respectful sport, and he's going to inject some new life into it. I mean, I think half of New Jersey is going to be there, and it's going to be fun for that reason. I mean, things need to be shaken up every once in a while, and he's a good one to do that. And I think, one of the things you think about when new guys come into the league, whether it's Seth Feider or Matt Robertson, you think back to Ike. When he came in, I remember they referred to him as the Yankee even the other Yankees don't like. And for him to become one of, if not the most respected angler around, represents a monumental change in this sport in just 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And all that he's accomplished in just 20 years is amazing. And Kevin has accomplished, I would argue, more on the playing field than Ike has, not to diminish anything that Ike and Ellie has done by any means. But now Kevin has an opportunity to catch up in some of those off the water things, I think.
I will share the screen here. The banquet is on September 28th. No? Yes. Glenn Andrews, Bruce
Thursday
Holt,
the 28th.
and Michael Iaconelli. I'm looking at my schedule. I thought for some reason it was on the 19th. I can actually go this. No. Yeah, I can actually go this year.
Good. I'll buy you a drink or 3.
No.
It's a great event. There's a great auction, a lot of items that can be got for below market value. Last year there was a bone fishing trip with Johnny Morris and Kevin Van Dam, and my wife really wanted to bid on that. So I told her, I think we agreed we would go up to $5,000 on that. And when the bidding started at $5,000, we had to drop out very quickly. So we did get a trip to Gros Savon one year, which was well worth it. I outbid Edwin Evers for that. And my wife was mad at me until she found out she got to go too.
There's a preview if you go to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame website, which is just bassfishinghof.com. They are updating some things or some previews of what we have for the auction so far. I can let all the BTL listeners know that there will be a 1-of-1 hand-drawn actual lead pencil drawing from Frank Scalish that will be framed and signed by Frank Scalish that will be in this auction. I'm sure we'll talk about it ad nauseum on day 4 with Frank Scalish, but I asked Frank if he would be willing to donate one of his drawings, and he said yes. So I'm kind of excited about that. I actually kind of helped him pick out which drawing it was. It's one that he's shown on day 4 a couple of different times. So excited for that giveaway.
Yeah.
Or giveaway or auction, actually.
It's a great week. And then I need to figure out, I was supposed to go to Mille Lacs earlier in September, and that just got canceled. So now for the first time in my professional life, I have some vacation time I have to use before the end of the year and nothing planned. So I need to figure out where we might go to Mexico in November. If anyone wants to go to Mexico, shoot us a message. And maybe we'll get a group together.
You need to come catch 3-pound crappie with me for a day or 2.
Where is that?
20 minutes from my house.
Really? I would love that.
14-foot rods, 30-pound braid, bait casters, looking at them on live scope, dropping in, watching them go from a ball, turn into a crappie, go up, and you just jam them like it's a mat in Okeechobee. And I mean, a 19, 20-inch crappie comes up.
Oh, I'm totally into that.
Yeah, 100%.
What's the time of year to do that?
It's Halloween through March.
Okay, I'm free. Good. I'm going to take you up on that because
like you can stay. I got a guest bedroom. It's all decked out. I've even got a Scentsy in there, so it smells nice. And we just hop in the boat, and I mean, it's just you just crack them. I mean, it's hunting. You catch like 6 to 8 a day, but they're all between 2 and 3 pounds.
You know what? I've been on all these trips, for sailfish and tuna and peacocks. You know what my number one domestic dream trip has been up until now?
What's that?
Havasu for those big red ears. I want to catch like those 3-pound red ears. So the crappie thing actually really excited me. My wife and her friend Samantha, who's a guide up at Sturgeon Bay, they fished with Chad Morgenthaler and bass fishing one day. And then he taught them how to shoot docks for crappie, which my wife had never done. And they spent the whole second day doing that instead of bass fishing. She said it was the most fun she's ever had. And she's been a lot of cool places. So yes, crappie is appealing and you can fry them. I
need to show you a picture of this before we get out of here. Like here, this is my buddy that I took.
Holy cow. Looks like a drum.
Yeah, that's a crappie.
Do you eat those or do you release those?
Release all the big ones.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's a 4-pound largemouth.
How much time do you do that instead of bass fishing in the winter?
I don't bass fish in the winter unless it's a tournament. I just crappie fish exclusively. Like, I mean, there's 20 lakes that I can go around to. So
I got one question that's been fascinating me, if you have the time for it, is about the opens. You've been out in the opens this year and you've seen how ultra popular having people fish all 9 are. Has there been anything that surprised you or anyone who has surprised you out there in terms of what they've accomplished or didn't accomplish?
I'll tell you what has surprised me is how the veteran FLW Tour and Elite Series guys and guys who have been around and the MPFL guys, like it's a core group of new open anglers and younger 20-somethings that are dominating this thing, and they're averaging a 39th place finish. They should be averaging a 58th to 60th place at this point of the season, and they're so far ahead of the freaking curve that it's insane. And it's showing that maybe experience doesn't play as much as it used to because of a number of different factors.
I mean,
it's been surprising to me.
I see it, and this is sort of apples and oranges, but looking at those Elite Series Angler of the Year standings, I think of the guys in the top 10 right now, is Drew Benton the only one who was there before the split? You got
Cook was
Rookie of the Year before the split, right?
Yeah.
But Patrick Walters was not, was he? He was Rookie of the Year the following year.
Yeah.
I mean, just it's how much of a change has there been in the sport. And I don't think it's all due to forward-facing sonar. I think it's like any other sport. You get new blood in and they have access to resources that previous generations didn't, and they're hungry.
I agree. Let me pull this up. Let me show everybody. This is you and Hannah's baby right here, halfpastfirstcast.com. Any of the trips that you've talked about, you guys have blogs, you have all sorts of information on upcoming trips, and it's also just an entertaining website. Even if you just plan on living in your basement, not going anywhere, it's worth a visit.
Well, we've had several people from BTL who've come on trips with us, both to Mexico, to Guatemala, and to Alaska, actually. And I really like taking people out of their element and doing something new. And I love all these trips, and they're very special places to me. And like I said, I like seeing them through new eyes. So we would encourage people to reach out to us. They're not that out of reach financially in some cases. And if they are out of your reach financially, we may be able to suggest something else you could do comparable.
There you go. Half past first cast.
And also, we have a visitor who's been dying to make a guest appearance.
Well, you should have said that before. You could have come in for a whole segment. So here's what we're up against. Come on for a segment. But we got Smallmouth Crush is going live here in a little bit, and I try not to go live on top of my friends, so we have like 10, 15 minutes.
We'll just have Hannah, the brains behind the operation, introduce herself. And, you know, if you call up, what happens is people email us and ask for a trip. And I'm like, talk to her, because I'm not really good at the like logistics or saving you money.
What's up, Hannah? You can talk.
Oh, she can't hear. She doesn't have headphones.
She can't hear. Here, give her the headphones and we'll finish it out.
Hannah's taking over for me.
Okay.
Wait, me here. I'm not good at this.
Sit down.
Hello.
Hi. Trust me, I'm not good at this either, but if you just do it over and over again, you just forget that there's people actually watching, and then you just have a good time. I like those glasses, by the way.
Hey, look like you.
No, so he was talking about the different trips. I know you were listening on that, but you coordinate a lot of these trips on the Half Pass First Cast.
Absolutely. Yes. And anybody has questions, get a hold of me.
Okay.
I have all the answers. And if I don't, I can get you the answers.
What do you guys have coming up right now? Mexico next year?
We're going to Mexico. Actually, in May, we're going to Panama. We sold out.
Okay.
So you got to go get a hold of me.
What kind of fish is that?
Tuna.
Oh, okay.
On top water.
Ooh, that's a good
and
one.
Rooster fish and Jack Crevalle and all kinds. But the reason we go is for tuna. And then we get to take it home and fill our freezer.
Okay.
Then we're going to Mexico in June 22nd through 29th. You can go all or portion of that. Still have rooms left. And we're also going to Guatemala for sailfish.
You've done that before. That's like it's the deal where you like get spoiled on sailfish, where instead of hooking up with like one, you hook up with like 10 a day.
Yeah,
right?
it's ridiculous. Yes.
Yeah.
It's fun. And you can go with your wife if she's not a good angler or doesn't like fishing, because she can stay out in the boat. But once it's her turn, she'll get hooked, and then
I see this. This one's outside of my price range, Hannah. Just the title has the words Sailfish Paradise Ultimate and Luxury in it. I'm out on that one.
Actually, it's cheaper than the Panama trip.
Okay.
But yeah, if you look at it and you're splitting the boat with people, and it's actually a good deal.
And the cool thing is both you and Pete work with all these lodges around the world, literally around the world.
Yes.
To create deals, so it's not just show up and have no idea what the hell's going on. That's the whole point of this.
And a lot of times we're there with you, so it makes it even easier. You know, I play mom.
You guys work this out perfectly. Like,
we're no dummies.
You have everything going at home, and then you get to go on these trips around the world, and then you bring people along with it, and then you do PR. It's a magical
win-win.
System. It's a magical system that you guys.
Awesome people. And we're like best friends with many of them that we've hooked up with. Everybody has to go to Alaska. You talked with Pete about that. You have to start saving today.
Yeah.
Because you have to get there, as you know. Before you leave this earth, you have to get there. If it's not with us, you got to go on your own.
I got lucky. Like I said, I got a buddy who's up there, and I think I did it for like $3,000 or $4,000. And that was without like anything. So, I mean, that was just me like getting there.
Right. It's expensive. It was a little over $8,000 for.
Yeah. But dude, we didn't even get into this with Pete, because I was going to talk about the value of new life experiences later in life. Because I was 38. Yesterday, I surfed for the first time ever. And I had this rush of endorphins as I just ate salt water and stubbed my toe on rocks. But it was the first time I had ever done it. And I was so out of my element, but I enjoyed it so much. And I was so proud of myself, even though I never even got up on the board. And I was like, man, the older you get in life, you have less and less first times, like first experiences, something out of your comfort zone, something new. And I think that kind of taught me to appreciate that more. And that's what these trips are.
Yeah. Hello. Half Pass First Cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got it. I get it now. By the way, they're not sponsored. I just like Pete and Hannah and stuff and have them on. So they do a cool gig. So
we want to help people do what they think they probably can't, and we can get them to do it.
What's most favorite fish, like a single fish story from all of your adventures? Is there one fish that sticks out to you? Okay,
yes,
let's hear it.
Does. So we're in Mexico, and I had we had been at Lake El Salto in the morning, and I caught a 9.5. We go over to Lake Picachos in the afternoon, and we're fishing, and we're tied up to a tree, and if a fish missed the Senko, the next one got it. 72 fish in a row, and I catch a fish, and it comes up, and Pete's like, "Look at that eye! It's a 12-pounder!" And I'm like, my heart's going. It's not in the boat. He's yelling, "It's a 12-pounder! It's a 12-pounder!" So remember, I caught a 9.5 in the morning. Yeah. I caught my 12-pounder, and I did not. It was 4 ounces short of my 10-pounder, and it still has nightmares.
It was 9.12.
It was 9.12.
Is that your biggest bass? Wait, did you say at the start of that you caught him 72 casts in a row?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
How big? Like dinks or good ones?
Some dinks, some good ones, but it was like we couldn't leave the spot. And then of course I was in the boat when somebody caught a 10.44, which was a couple months ago. Paul Fissler caught a 10.44 on a crankbait. Yep, there I was.
So all your memorable ones are bass and not the exotics.
I don't know. Those are there he is. Oh, did you see him? Poor guy. No, but like everything, I always say to Pete, "Who does this?" And he looks at me and he goes, "You're doing it."
Yeah.
And I was like, it is. Every trip is my best trip. This last trip, I was fishing. I turned around to recast my fly. And I'm like, guys, there's a bear with her cubs behind me, like literally 2 flies away. And I was like, they're like, okay. They knocked the rocks and off they went. And we kept fishing. I mean, who does that?
I always thought in Alaska if I'm going to go out in a weird way, that's a pretty good way to go out.
Yeah.
Like literally, like while I was up there fishing, I understand exactly what you're talking about with the bears. I remember thinking, you know what? If I'm going to go out, bear attack while salmon fishing is pretty dang cool.
It is, but because they're not going to get you. Although when we were first at the place we went to, we got dropped into the creek and we walked just a little bit and there we were at the water and all of a sudden the bears started coming out and I was like, we need to go home. They're like, the plane just took off. And I was like, no, we need to go home now. And they're like, but then you make noise, they go away.
Yeah.
And they're looking for the same thing you are. So just don't get in their way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, so they want the fish just like we want the fish. And then it's fun watching them after you realize they really, I mean, yes, you have to be alert and make sure they're not right behind you. But you just make noise and they go away. I was
always told never fish in front of bushes.
Correct. Or at least make sure that you're making noise.
They just literally pop out of the bushes and they go, oh, wow, there's someone here. And then you turn around and go, oh, wow, there's someone here. And then that's when it gets sketchy.
Yeah. But all you men out there, take your wives on all these trips so I can meet more women because they might say they don't want to go, but they do. And they probably just want to go because they don't want to be around all you crusty old men.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
Right.
That's a fair point.
So we have to talk, it's who has the best outfit, whose hair looks the best, right? Who's got the best glasses? No, just kidding. But we all all us girls get competitive.
Yeah. All right. That's good stuff, Hannah. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks,
I appreciate it.
I hope to talk to some of you. Hold on just a second. Give it back to the main guy.
We'll give it back to Pete and we will wrap things up on a special BTL evening edition. Hellabass has ulterior motives in asking Pete Robbins for a fantasy fishing update. Yes, we know you had 1,400 points in your last event. You're kicking all of our butts. Good.
Rich kicks my butt every year.
I know it is. So we'll just skip past that. Here's what I want everyone to do before we log off. Right now, Travis Manson, if you guys don't listen to Smallmouth Crush, it's who I stayed with for the last Open. It's who I stayed with in the Toyota Series Championship. Been a buddy of his for over 10 years. He does a Monday Night Live that started at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 20 minutes ago. Head over to the Smallmouth Crush YouTube channel. flood his inbox with, "Hey, I'm here from BTL," just to mess with him. Anything else, Pete?
No, do you know who Wally Pipp is? Wally Pipp was the first baseman for the Yankees who sat out a game, and Lou Gehrig took over his spot. That's what I feel like when she sat down here. I'm never going to get invited back.
I know. I feel like she has some good stories up her sleeve.
She has a lot of stories about me, so let's keep her off of this show again. I appreciate it. I just encourage everyone along with me to watch the remainder of the Elite Series season. We will see you at the Classic, and I hope to see you at a fishery far, far away.
Sounds good. Pete Robbins, thanks for jumping on. I know it's been a very hectic week, and we literally had to figure out when we could spend an hour to work you in between your day job and your world travels. So we'll get you back on after the year's over and break things down. Tonight was more of a discussion, kind of catching up on it. I mean, we'd have had this talk on the phone off air. I said, I'll just have it on there and talk about it. So
awesome.
Appreciate it, Pete. Half Past First Cast. Check it out. Head over to Smallmouth Crush if you're listening to this live. If you're not, he does his replays too. I don't know if he believes in podcasting though, so I think you might just have to catch the replay on YouTube. See you, Pete. We're out.
Later.